Mark Williams joins me. He's conservative commentator, former president of the Tea Party Express, his website, and talk show host of his website, marktalk.com, marktalk.com. Hey, Mark.
Hey, how are you doing, Tom?
Good.
Been a while.
Welcome back, indeed. This Detroit situation, you sent us either a link or the article itself to this openmarket.org piece about how the Detroit bankruptcy in part was a consequence of their pensions being in trouble and how pensions all over America are in trouble. You want to elucidate on that?
Yeah, in fact, I live in California, which when it finally does go down, it will be the pensions. What's happened is I hate to use the trite phrase like kick the can, but we've gotten to the end of that particular road. Today, and the problem here is not the pensioners. The problem is politicians and union leaders and others, corporate folks, who back in the day figured that they would say and promise whatever it is they chose to say and promise, and eventually somebody else would have to pay for it somewhere down the generational line. They robbed.
Wait a minute, Mark. You know that's not the case. The problem is that the pension actuarials, the people who calculate the assumed rate of return on pension investments, because first of all, let's define terms. There's two ways that you can save for retirement. One is a defined investment. What is it called? Defined,
I believe defined payment or something.
Yeah, defined payment, whatever. It's a 401k where
you're going to get $10 no matter how the.
That's right. You got $100,000 in the bank. When your $100,000 is gone, even if you live another 10 years, you are just flat out of luck, Charlie. And the other is a pension where you get a fixed and predictable amount of money for the rest of your life. Social Security is a pension, basically. And pension plans were widespread in the United States until Reagan came along with his idea of, back then they called them individual retirement accounts, IRAs, and then 401ks became popular under the Bush administration, the first Bush administration. And where it's just, you have what you have. But we had pensions. I mean, from the 30s, pensions started becoming very popular in the 30s and 40s as a bargaining chip among employers as an added benefit for people. And they worked fine in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and early 80s.
The bill hadn't come due yet. I mean,
the bill came due a lot of times through that time. It's just that they were operating. They were doing their math based on the assumption of 7% returns on their investments.
But they weren't funding these things. That's the problem.
Oh, they were.
Especially the public sector. They weren't funding these pension plans. They were using the money, diverting it for other things, and saying, "Don't worry about it. Somebody down the road will have to pay."
Well, there were some corporations.
And that's what happened to us here in California. We are. I mean, nobody knows how many billions and billions of dollars in the hole we are, because for every dollar they promised somebody, they kicked in a couple of pennies.
But the problem is what's called the discount rate. And the discount rate is, what you assume you're going to make as a return on your investment, and then you calculate that against the probability of how many people are going to survive how many years. And historically, which is basically the return on investment assumption. And historically, these pensions have been assuming a return on investment of 7 or 8%. And that worked fine in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and even the first half of the 80s. And then Reaganomics kicked in, and for the last 30 years, return on investment has not been what it used to be. And you combine that with the trillions of dollars worth of equity that was wiped out by the great Bush crash, and you've got pensions which have invested their money, and they're not getting those rate of returns. In fact, the article you sent me says if all these pensions just calculated with a 5% assumption of return on investments, everything would be fine. But they're continuing to use these 7 and 8% numbers, these pre-Reaganomic numbers. And, Reaganomics has just devastated the middle class, and it's also devastated the ability of a pension to get a decent rate of return.
We also, with a stated benefit, we remove any incentive that the pensioner has while they're still working to monitor that investment and monitor that rate of return.
Exactly.
No matter what happens to that fund,
exactly,
they're going to get X number of dollars.
Which I think most people think is a really good thing.
Depending on how well that fund performs, they're going to be a whole lot more vigilant, and they're going to be a whole lot less low information.
But see, I think that's a good thing. Why do you think that we should say to 115 million American workers, not only do you have to do your job all day, and raise your family and parent your kids and wife your husband or husband your wife and all the other responsibilities. Plus, you have to become an expert in investments. You have to manage your own 401k. That's crazy. I like the idea. I don't have a pension. I wish I did. I like the idea of being able to say to an organization that has professional investors, here, I'll cut a deal with you. You guarantee me that on the day I retire, I get $2,000 a month for the rest of my life, and I'll give you this money right now, and you are committed to that, so you're going to have to meet those investment goals. Well, I don't want to become an investment expert. I don't want to be diligent.
The promise aren't the ones who have to pay it. It's the generations to come. It's you, it's me, it's our kids, it's our grandchildren.
People with pensions paid for it every single day of their lives.
$1,000 of debt before they take their first breath.
My dad had a pension. He worked 40 years in a tool and die shop, and when he retired, he had a pension, which he kept until the day he died. And in fact, it rolled over to my mom until she died, and it worked just fine. I mean,
Sure. Well, my dad's got one from the paper mill he worked in. I mean,
right. So why should these people have had to become investment experts back in their 30s when they were trying to raise their families?
It's not a matter of being an expert in investments.
Well, it's what you just said. You said people should be diligent about their investments. I think that's crazy.
Do you not double check? If your mechanic tells you you've got X expensive thing wrong, do you not double check?
I don't know how to.
Expert, but you're paying attention.
Mark, if my mechanic tells me that the piston rings in my car are bad, I'm not going to rip the engine block apart and double check.
No, but you're going to ask somebody else to check it out.
No, I'm not.
A doctor, and the doctor says you need your spleen out. I don't think you're going to stop there. I think maybe you're going to go to another doctor who might have a different opinion about your spleen. It's simply about being situationally aware. We are in a post-literate society. People don't know how to think critically. People don't know how to evaluate. And it's getting worse.
People are overloaded, Mark. Reaganomics has doubled the workload of the middle class. We used to have what used to be before Reagan, one person could raise, more than half of American working families. One person could could fully fund the family. Now the average income, it used to be that the average individual wage and the average household wage were within 10 or 15% of each other. Now the average household wage is $44,000 a year, but the average income wage is $25,000 a year. That's almost 2 full-time jobs in the average family in America. And you're asking those people to also become investment advisors?
We regulated the jobs into the third world. And what we're left here with is service jobs, repairing and servicing the products that come from the third world.
I know, and when I hear Republicans and conservatives say that, I get it. You guys are bragging about what you did to the working class.
No, not at all. I mean, I'll be one of the first people to tell you that far be it from me to defend anything from the Roosevelt political bloodline, but Teddy Roosevelt's progressive trust busting and FDR's FDIC, which was destroyed in the Clinton administration, all of that stuff that was good, that was reasonable. Saying that you can't dump cyanide into a reservoir, that's reasonable. But we've gotten to a point now where, in fact, I've got a family member involved in doing this, where companies that are trying to get startup money here to produce good jobs can't deal with the regulation. They find themselves going offshore.
Tell me one regulation.
Brother-in-law who's making himself.
Tell me one regulation.
You're recruiting those people to
tell me one regulation that you would like to do away with that would help us have jobs. Because usually when people say that, they're speaking on behalf of the Koch brothers, and they want Koch Industries to be able to dump more stuff in the air and water. Tell me one regulation.
The Constitution.
One regulation, Mark. Name it. I may agree with you. One regulation you want to get rid of.
I'll tell you what, let's pick one of the several 100,000 pages of regulations, any one.
One regulation.
Okay, my backyard, because it gets wet 3 months a year, is not a vernal pool. It's not a wetland, but try to tell that to the EPA.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Mark Williams. Hang on just a second.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Mark Williams, marktalk.com. You can read all about it. Mark likes wetlands, or doesn't like wetlands, or one or the other, right, Mark?
Right.
Okay. Thank you, Mark.